Well, I'm back, as you might have expected was going to happen. This is an Amiga 2000 motherboard, and unfortunately it has a problem, and the problem is my fault. So let's have a look here. We'll have a look around at the area, in particular near the keyboard port, and you'll notice this particular resistor right here. Me, in my infinite wisdom, was making my own homemade PS2 to DIN plug adapter because I was too impatient to wait for one from the shops. And so in doing so, I shorted a couple of banana plugs on my test leads and I shorted something out. The plus side is that's all I can see that's wrong. The downside is that also feeds the real-time clock, and as you can see from my messy bit of hot glue, I've also replaced the board, the battery even. So I had to strip this motherboard back to nothing. So yes, I know a lot of you are screaming at me about this hot glue. This is temporary, it's coming off, and I'll do something better than wrapping up a button cell holder in duct tape. But this is purely until I can make sure everything works, and then we'll work on cleaning it up and doing a better job. This glue was applied nice and cold, so it's easy to remove. So don't hang me for that. Now, I got really lucky. I went down to my local J-car dealer today, and they are magic. They have exactly what I need. Brown, black, gold, gold, 1 ohm, half-watt resistor. And I've been lucky enough to get myself a lend of a desoldering tool, a proper vacuum type one. So, let's jump right into it. Now, let's see how well this works. You can see here I'm shining a light through the back of the motherboard. So we have here the keyboard socket and a capacitor that is immediately adjacent to that resistor, which means we can see the resistor tracks we need to replace right there. I'll be marking these just with a little permanent marker so that I'm sure I'm removing the correct component. I don't really want to mess up when I'm doing this. Okay, we can see from a better angle here that I've marked the correct tracks. And so we will be, where's my Sharpie, working from that point and that point there. So it would appear that I made a slight cock up here. That one there. This is why you measure twice, cut once. Make doubly sure that you've got everything right. I don't want another mistake with this project. I'm already kicking myself about this one particular part. And I have noticed when I look over here, I'm not the only one to have made a few little marks on this board. That looks like a repair as well. I think I'm going to check that out afterwards. Anyway, let's get cracking with this join. Okay, this thing's kind of noisy, but I want to check that I've got a bit of activity here. Going to need extraction fans. Right, so let's see how we go here. I will need a little bit of solder on this join here. This is going to be awkward with the camera. Probably why I'm making mistakes. I'm trying to film everything. That looks good. Now, the next thing I'm going to have to do here, and excuse my hasty language and lack of proper grammar, I'm trying to fold these pins up, or the legs rather, and I'm not going to cut them off here. I just want to get the edge of my flush cutters onto one side and lift it up. That way I can put the leg down the tip of the desoldering iron and get a good seal. Still not pulling everything through. I want to be a little careful. I don't want to suck through plating through. Alright, so now a trick I've learnt from watching several people, including the 8-bit guy, is breaking out the pins. There we go, that's loosened it. I'm just wriggling these backwards and forwards just a little bit till the pins are free of the solder. That looks good. and that looks acceptable, adequately satisfactory. Now comes the interesting bit. I'm going to use my trusty Leatherman and try and extract the component, which will of course require another camera angle. So let's change now. Okay, we have a different camera angle, and we have my apprentice in the peanut gallery up behind me. So let's see if I can get this. Beautiful. That came out beautifully. And let's just have a look at this on camera here. Okay, apparently I have something else to fix. This is a 1 ohm resistor that was reading 68k. I think it's not right. Let's get round to chipping the other one off. I'll attend to whatever problems my apprentice is after, and then we will be putting in one of these guys. Okay, back after a brief intermission. I'm about to put new resistor in. Something interesting happening again with my apprentice. Anyway, we can see the legs through here. Now I'm going to try and do this as best I can so that you can see what's happening, but I'm going to bend the legs out a little bit. Then we're going to flip the board and apply some solder. So let's flip our board over. Alright, and I'm going to turn off the desoldering gun now. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Excuse my finger. And we will turn on over the back here another soldering iron. Once that warms up, we'll be back to solder in the resistor. Okay, I'm pretty sure my soldering iron is up to temperature, and I'm just in reach of the nice silicon cable. So give this a bit of a tin to check that we're up to temperature. Might be here. And I have a little 3D printed holder for some steel wire, or some Brillo pad here, just to help get it clean. Probably need to change my Brillo pad one of these days soon too. So let's just touch this gently here, a little bit fold in. Alright, put in my iron, and we'll just have a quick check here. There's my apprentice. Still not quite sure what she's after today. We'll figure it out. Now let's just lift that up. Okay, that looks like we're in pretty well. So the two joins that we've just done, in case you're not following, there's one there and there's one there. Now I'm going to put a little bit of contact cleaner on here and just clean off the flux. So excuse me while I prepare stuff off camera here. Now let's give it a bit of a clean. And I have a suitably sacrificial toothbrush here just to give things a little bit of a scrub to make sure. Okay, I'll wait till the remaining cleaner evaporates. An interesting little tip too, I learned from a jeweler, is to trim toothbrush bristles shorter. It allows you to scrub things a little cleaner. Also very good for getting polishing compound out of white metal, but we'll cover that in another video. Alright, one other thing I'm going to do while I'm looking here, I have seen these situations cause problems, so I'm going to take our flush cutters and just trim these guys back a little bit. And just going to do a little bit of cleaning work whilst I've got the macro lens going here. I can see everything else that's happening. I like a good clean flush cut. I don't think I'm going to worry too much about the rest of it, except for that little bit of junk, a bit of dust right in the foreground. While I have the board out, it's a good opportunity to get to all of this. Something else I'm going to check briefly. Does appear to be some corrosion here, so I'm going to do a brief bit of cleaning, and I don't think I'll bother with a montage this time. I'll just get it cleaned up and we'll get it reassembled. We'll spend the rest of our time playing with it if I can get the keyboard working. Further inspection, I found there's obviously been some repair done with the AV sockets here, and there's been probably some either flux core or I presume resin core solder used. And there's some other little dicky looking contacts here. So this is definitely going to need a bit of a scrub and clean up. And because there's been some repair done here, sticking my thumb on here and just seeing if any of these move. They don't seem to be moving. I have read that the AV sockets do suffer, so I'll be inspecting that all very closely. There is also this strange little anomaly here. I'm not sure if that's actually meant to be the case, so I'll check that out probably with a desoldering tool in a moment. Anyway, I've got a lot more points to check yet, so onwards with the checking, I guess. Okay, I hope this is not too much of a crazy angle. We're on the top of my desk here, which has an upper level, and it may wobble a little bit. I'm sorry, but I'm doing my very best here to try and work in the limited space I have. In any case, enough of the waffling on. What we're up to now is reinserting this board. There is one thing I'd like to do before I actually put everything back in, and that's this little bypass that we added. I really would like to keep that out of the way, so while we have the opportunity, I'm going to tack that down with a little bit of something. And I have some tape, and I have tested the electrical conductivity of this too, just in case something crazy is going on. So we're going to just reinforce that on the underside of the board, and we're making especially sure to keep clear of both the sharp edge and the existing standoff holes. Good thing about cloth tape is it bends it tears very easily. So we're just going to wrap around here. I'm hoping people aren't yelling at me too much about this. Making the best of a rather unfortunate situation at the moment. I have to say, this is not the smoothest restoration I've done. I generally don't break things when I do a restoration. Alright, that should minimize the chance of it snagging on things. So let's see now, where are our ports? Well, that looks like our LPT ports. We're dealing from the front, so this looks like our keyboard port and our replaced resistor. So let's sit this in nice and carefully. Now, should you happen to be doing one of these yourself, and you're lucky enough to get hold of one, just be aware that once you've removed the obvious screws and the standoffs, there is a screw here, and there's another one at the first serial port at the front. They're actually part of the port screws, and they go to standoffs underneath the board as well. So that was a catch, but luckily I'm gentle and cautious for the most part, particularly when in the bedroom, and that meant that I didn't break anything. I managed to find it. That looks like it's gone in nice and firmly. There's standoff, that's a screw hole, standoff, screw hole, standoff, standoff, standoff. Right, so it looks like all of the holes are in. There's no bending, it's in quite firmly. So we'll go ahead and put all the screws back in this, and from there we'll be able to do some testing. And I know I'm jinxing myself by putting all the screws in before I test, but I don't want to have to disassemble this again. Every time I disassemble a piece of hardware like this, there is an increased risk that I'll do permanent damage. So I'm trying to keep the disassembly to a minimum. So let's move on to the post-assembly point. So apprentice, what are we doing today? We're fixing an Amiga 2000. And it's almost assembled. So doing quite well here.
There you go, boy. Just drive. Right now. Right.
Okay, I'm getting a good tutorial on all the port names, which is good. Now I know what they are. Okay, so we have most of this reassembled. We have our RAM expander, we have our SCSI card, we have our, I forget the name of this thing, cache board, power supply, video card, drives, everything's in. I just have to plug the SCSI cable back in, and I'm going to double check my keyboard adapter, and I'm going to do that after I double check all my connections first so I don't repeat this problem. However, I have about 12 of these 1 ohm resistors, so we'll go from there. And before you ask, I have statically grounded my Apprentice. So let's move on and test this thing. It's nearly smoke test time. I have my meter on in the low voltage range. I've taped up the hot wire. The negative I'm not worrying about. This is normally connected to ground. This is my anti-static strap. So when I'm working, my wrist rests on this and it grounds me as I work. However, I've disconnected that. You'll probably be aware of some ground looping issues if you watched my last video where I added the continuity check function to this box and experienced an issue with that. Now, I have my adapter in. I have checked for shorts. I have power in. I have video. I need to switch over to a different input there. And I need to find the remote for the TV. My Apprentice has been in here, so this could take a little while. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so after 15 minutes of chasing her around the room, I found she had it in a pocket. So let's continue with our checklist. So the switch here is in the on position for the boot booster, cache card. We have power. Let's go and check on my dodgy power board over here. Yes, we do have power. Let's fire it up and hope we don't see any magic smoke. Wait for the turbine engine in the hard drive to fire up. Does sound very similar. I was on the airfield recently watching the smaller brothers to the Elvis and the Ericsson Sky Cranes take off, and the starter motor on those sounds very similar to these hard drives. Okay, so I hear some activity. I see some motion on the screen. Something says invalid format. Let's switch between signals again. Could be just a bodgy connection. Okay, so in that case I'm going to have to find myself a composite video input. One moment. So, as it turned out, I needed to turn the video card on. There's a switch. Right, so we've booted up. Let's do the unthinkable that killed things last time. So, let's talk this through, even if it looks like I'm talking to myself here. I'm going to double check this. So, I have a diagram on screen for the PS2 pin out. At least I did. Let me bring that up and we'll continue on. My multimeter on low voltage range. Let's check that is our positive, that's our negative, common and ground. My leads are nicely separated. One is taped up. Now, let's rotate this round to the same orientation. That is indeed a female connector. So I have a female PS2 connected diagram, which means this pin here should be our positive for 5 volts, and our ground should be number 3 over here. Let's see, and we have 5 volts. Okay. For the uneducated, that doorbell means that somebody has crossed the boundary of our property with an infrared beam. So that probably means I'm now required to help bring some shopping in. Not the end of the world, because our 5 volts are working. So as soon as I've done that, I'll be back to plug in a keyboard. Well, ask and ye shall receive. I had a chat to the original owner, and it turns out he came up with a keyboard and an unused mouse, and as it turns out, a whole bunch of other stuff, including an original Amiga 1000, the original keyboard, and a RAM expansion, and lots more, which you'll see in future videos. Now, the little situation we were stuck with here, you'll probably hear the sounds of dinner in the background. I apologize for that. My problem is that I needed an Amiga key and the arrows to move around. So let's see if I can do this with my left hand, and we'll see. Well, too far. The inertial thing takes a bit of getting used to. Let's cancel this request, and I think I use Control Amiga here, and we've got Amiga DOS. Let's go in for a closer look. Alright, and we have Workbench. We've even got Galaga on here. He's also kindly given me a loan of an original Amiga joystick as well. Here you go. we've got some programs on default startup here. It's going to take me a little bit to catch up with what all this is to do with, but I now have a whole bunch of documentation as well and a bunch of floppy disks. So this is going to be learning. But importantly, the keyboard works. I didn't kill the keyboard port. We have the original keyboard condom, I'm going to call this thing, on here, and it does feel like a very old used condom. If you may not know what that sensation's like, but trust me, that's about how this feels. Now I guess I need to put the case on. I also need to find the location of the hard drive and power light connectors. The power light I'm aware of, I just need to plug that in. The hard drive light I need to look up on some specs. But we have success, and we've even got the Supra Turbo 28 module in action there, and I know that because I've just been given the original box. So you'll see some of that with some more correct explanations of things very soon. Certainly learning in an awful hurry with this. But for now, I'm going to have my dinner and I'm going to go watch another episode of Halt and Catch Fire. It's an episode I very much recommend. In any case, this ends part 2 of the Amiga saga, but there will be more. Just some additional content before I go. I didn't feel right about de-virginizing this mouse without showing you guys. Stuff like this in original condition is just so hard to find these days. I thought if I'm going to do this, I should at least do it on camera so that you guys can witness it and there's some historical record of it. And this feels like quality silicon cable. Now, for some of the younger viewers who have never seen this before, mice, before your time, used to use balls. And I'm not going to try and do this, I'm just going to pick this little bit of foam out. This is the travel foam designed to stop the ball rattling in transit. But it was quite often in the middle of a project or a school piece of homework to have to pull the ball out and clean it. Alright. And you'll notice Futurama in one of the episodes where they go to a planet that is entirely inhabited by robots. They have a little Apple IIe sitting there that is the judge, judging over the humans. And one of the suggestions is clean the gunk out of the mouse ball, which is actually a legit thing. So you can hear the rattle here. And mouse buttons that don't sound right. Or they do sound right if you're from the 80s. I'm an 83 kid and I experienced the 90s, so I've only ever remembered the tactile switches or the particular variant of the Honeywell mouse that had 2 rollers in place of the ball. I quite liked those, but they still had that classic tactile switch click in them. In any case, that ends the little bonus addendum. Thanks very much for watching this video, and I'm actually really excited that this hasn't completely gone up in smoke, so keep an eye out. There'll be more vintage stuff. I've just got a whole bunch of stuff arrived. I might even do an unboxing video. Well, second bit of bonus footage. Apparently the original owner had a screensaver. I think I might use this as the title screen today.